Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Jai Gurudev. Yesterday we were seeing verse 28 and 29. I will just repeat those two verses and then we will follow. Yunjannaivam sadatmanam yogi vidatakalmashah sukhena brahm sparsham atyantam sukhamashnute. The meditator, free from the conflicts born of adharma, always connecting the mind in this manner, easily gains absolute happiness, born of contact with recognition of Brahman. Please understand this, no effort is required to gain Swarupa Sukha because you are already that Swarupa. Sarvabhutasthamatmanam Sarvabhutani Chatmani Ikshate Yoga Yuktatma Sarvatra Samadarshanaha. One whose mind is resolved by this contemplation, who has the vision of sameness everywhere, sees the self abiding in all beings and all beings in the self. So the Samadarshi person, he doesn't see the difference. I'll just repeat the paragraph before we start a new topic. So the sameness that is in everything. Such a person is also Sarvatra Samadarshana, one who sees the sameness, Sama, that is Atma, in everything. In other words, there is an appreciation, a vision of that which is always the same in all beings. In all beings, in everything, there is something without any special attribute, Nirvishesha. and there is something peculiar to each, Vishesha. We see this Nirvishesha and Vishesha in different types of golden ornaments, chains, bangles, rings, and so on. In all of them, there is one thing that is Nirvishesha, gold, while the particular form such as chain, etc. is Vishesha. Although gold is also an attribute, this example illustrates the point being made here. With reference to all these chains, bangles, and rings, there is something common in all of them, something nirvishesha, something that is the truth, satya of all of them, gold. There are many visheshas, all the various names and forms, nama, rupa, the attributes, chain, bangles, ring, etc. have their existence in the Satya gold. Similarly, all Nama Rupas have their basis, their truth, their existence, Satya in Atma, that is Brahman, and that Atma, Brahman, I am. The one who knows the Nirvishesha, that is free from attributes, the Satya in everything, Sarvatra, that which lends its existence to all names and forms, is called Sarvatra Samadarshanaha. Wherever the person looks, he or she sees Brahman. Please remember this very important line, that one who sees everything around him or her as Brahman only, he is Samadarshi. Contemplation is the appreciation of what is being said here. There is no real looking implied here. What is meant is that for this person, there is no ignorance about the self. The vision of the person is that the self is in all beings and all beings are in the self. This vision, the vision of Vedanta, described in its entirety in this verse and the next two verses, is what is referred to as the knowledge. In fact, these three verses lend themselves to contemplation because contemplation is primarily the appreciation of what is being said here. The meaning of the word I is not exactly as we understand it to be. It is not this physical body, mind, sense complex. When you say, this is my body, my mind, my senses, you become someone who abides in the body, mind, sense complex. For this, you require no special knowledge. In fact, it is very common for people to take themselves in this way. And not only do you take yourself to be someone who abides in the body, mind, sense complex, you also take the body, mind, and senses to be yours, which is why you say, this is my body, my mind, my senses. Similarly, when you say, I'm fat, the body itself becomes the I. When you say, I am restless, the mind becomes the I. And when you say, I am tired, the prana becomes the I. This makes it possible for us to have two situations here. Either the physical body itself is Atma or Atma abides in the body. Both are being negated here. This Atma that you talk about is the Atma that abides in all beings. Sarva Bhutastha, not just in one Bhuta, in one body. So till here we had seen yesterday. Now there is a new topic. How can I recognize Atma when it is never an object? And how do you appreciate this Sarva Bhutasya Atma? Since Atma never becomes an object, you cannot see it like you can see the string that runs through different beads, thereby holding them together. Because you can see both the beads and the string, you can say that the string is Sarva Bhutastha, the beads being all the bhutas. The string is not just in one bead, it runs through all the beads. Even if the beads are of different shapes, colors, and value, all of them are run through by one string. Here, both the beads and the string are objects, both of them are anatma. Although this illustration is used to explain Sarva Bhutastha Atma, like any illustration, it is subject to defect. The defect here is that both the beads and the string are anatma. As an object perceived by you, the string is anatma and so are the beads. Even if the string is not seen by you, because the beads are strung so closely together, you can infer that the string is there. Thus, the string is an object inferred by you. Whether an object is perceived or inferred, either way, it is an object known by you and is therefore anatma. But here, how does the one who recognizes the Atma in all beings recognize it? I recognize the various beings, but if I recognize in all of them one Atma, Atma becomes an object of recognition. Atma can never be recognized as an object. How then is this statement, Sarva Bhutastham Atmanam Ikshate, to be understood? Atma is only one, and that is I. There is no other Atma because everything else is Anatma. If we define Atma as one thing referred to as the first person I, then everything that is evident to this Atma becomes Anatma. Therefore, is there not some difficulty here? How am I to recognize Atma in all these Anatmas? This problem arises because this Atma that I recognize as myself is not only in my physical body. It is not in any one physical body alone. When you associate it with one body, it becomes ahankara, the I notion. It becomes the jiva, the individual. Then you go one step further and recognize the jiva as pure chaitanya, pure consciousness alone. Then everything else in the world, all the beings, all the minds, etc., have their being in that consciousness which has no particular location. I will just read this last paragraph again. Atma is only one, and that is I. There is no other Atma because everything else is Anatma. If we define Atma as one thing referred to as the first person I, then everything that is evident to this Atma becomes Anatma. Therefore, is there not some difficulty here? How am I to recognize Atma in all these anatmas? This problem arises because this Atma that I recognize as myself is not only in my physical body. It is not in any one physical body alone. When you associate it with one body, it becomes ahankara, the I notion. It becomes the jiva, the individual. Then you go one step further and recognize the jiva as pure chaitanya, pure consciousness alone. Then everything else in the world, all the beings, all the minds, etc., have their being in that consciousness which has no particular location. Consciousness, Atma, is not located anywhere. If consciousness had a location, then it would be located only in living beings. In other words, consciousness would be here in one living being and at another place in another living being. Then how would we recognize the one that is present in all these beings? Between two beads, we can see or infer there is string. This is how we know that the string obtains in space also. But if consciousness had a particular location, how could we recognize it? There is no way to recognize consciousness, Atma, except by understanding that it has no location. It is not located anywhere. This is so beautiful. So it is not limited to one particular place. You cannot say my Atma is in my hand or in my eyes, or the Atma is only in the conscious being and not in the non-livings. Location itself is always in terms of spatial inquiry. The very concept of location is based upon the various forms that you see abiding in a space context. You see one object existing in one place, place P, another object existing in place P1, and between them there is space. Therefore, you say this object is located here and that object is located there. The location for two objects not being the same, you ask where particular objects are located or from where a certain person comes, etc. A physical body definitely has a location. It has to be located. Even concepts have their own location. And if you analyze the location of all these, you will find that they exist within the framework of time and space alone. All concepts, time, space concepts, and objects within time, space concepts exist where? That in which they are located is Atma, consciousness, called Sarva Bhutastha Atma, the self or the truth of all beings. This is a very important paragraph. I will just read it once again. Consciousness, Atma, is not located anywhere. If consciousness had a location, then it would be located only in living beings. In other words, consciousness would be here in one living being and at another place in another living being. Then how would we recognize the one that is present in all these beings? Between two beads, we can see or infer there is string. This is how we know that the string obtains in space also. But if consciousness had a particular location, how could we recognize it? There is no way to recognize consciousness, Atma, except by understanding that it has no location. It is not located anywhere. Location itself is always in terms of spatial inquiry. The very concept of location is based upon the various forms that you see abiding in a space context. You see one object existing in one place, place P, another object existing in place P1, and between them there is space. Therefore, you say this object is located here and that object is located there. The location for two objects not being the same, you ask where particular objects are located or from where a certain person comes, etc. A physical body definitely has a location. It has to be located. Even concepts have their own location. And if you analyze the location of all these, you will find that they exist within the framework of time and space alone. All concepts, time, space concepts, and objects within time, space concepts exist where? That in which they are located is Atma, consciousness, or called Sarva Bhutastha Atma, the self or the truth of all beings. So this is a very revealing statement because of which Swamiji had negated both the conditions as we analyzed earlier. So all concepts, time and space concepts and objects within time and space concepts exist where? That in which they are located is Atma, consciousness, Sarva Atma, the self or the truth of all beings. Time and space also have their existence in Atma. Why? Because Atma is not located in any one particular place. To understand this is to have an appreciation of Nirvishesha Chaitanya, attribute-free consciousness, which is the Swarupa, the nature of Atma. Nirvishesha Chaitanya is not located in time or space because time and space are not absolutes existing parallel to Atma. Time and space have their existence in the being that is Chaitanya. Consciousness, Chitta, is the being, the existence, Sat. Sat is Chit, Chit is Sat. And in this Sat, Chit, Atma, all beings have their existence. I will repeat, it is such a beautiful paragraph. Time and space also have their existence in Atma. Why? Because Atma is not located in any one particular place. To understand this is to have an appreciation of Nirvishesha Chaitanya, attribute-free consciousness, which is the Swarupa, the nature of Atma. Nirvishesha Chaitanya is not located in time or space because time and space are not absolutes existing parallel to Atma. Time and space have their existence in the being, that is Chaitanya. Consciousness, Chit, is the being. The existence, Sat. Sat is Chit and Chit is Sat. And in this Sat, Chit, Atma, all beings have their existence. Consciousness has no particular location in living beings because wherever there is a mind, consciousness is manifest there. And where there is no mind, consciousness is not manifest. There is nothing more to it than that. Therefore, manifest consciousness is seen as though it is a conscious being. A thought, a certain response on the part of the person is manifest, and from this you may say that the person has consciousness. In fact, this is not the way to look at it. The object of such an inference is anatma. Whatever you infer is anatma alone. The Chaitanya has no location whatsoever. In Chaitanya, everything is located. If this is understood, then wherever there is a being, the being has its being in the self. The self is the basis, adhisthana, for all beings. All beings have their adhisthana, their basis in the self alone. Therefore, the self runs through any being that you think about, and that being is sustained, vivified by this same self alone. In this way, Atma becomes the Adhisthana, the basis for any Bhuta. Being limitless, Atma is not bound by time or space. And in this limitless consciousness alone, all beings have their being, their existence. Each one of them has its adhisthana, its basis in Atma, and therefore in I, Aham. Aham Atma is not the self of any one being. It is the self that abides in all beings. Sarva Bhutastha Atma. It is such a beautiful. I think that is why Gurudev says that butterfly effect, right? It is whatever one person or one consciousness does, it has its impact on everything around it. I will just repeat. Consciousness has no particular location in living beings because wherever there is a mind, consciousness is manifest there. And where there is no mind, consciousness is not manifest. There is nothing more to it than that. Therefore, manifest consciousness is seen as though it is a conscious being. A thought, a certain response on the part of the person is manifest, and from this you may say that the person has consciousness. In fact, this is not the way to look at it. The object of such an inference is anatma. Whatever you infer is anatma alone. The Chaitanya has no location whatsoever. In Chaitanya, everything is located. Please remember this line for our Manana. The Chaitanya has no location whatsoever. In Chaitanya, everything is located. If this is understood, then wherever there is a being, the being has its being in the self. The self is the basis, adhisthana, for all beings. All beings have their adhisthana, their basis in the self alone. Therefore, the self runs through any being that you think about, and that being is sustained, vivified by this same self alone. In this way,
Can you?
Atma becomes the, yeah,
Yeah, there was a little disturbance, Bella. Can you just read the last sentence again and continue?
I will just read. The Chaitanya has no location whatsoever. In Chaitanya, everything is located. If this is understood, then wherever there is a being, the being has its being in the self. The self is the basis, adhisthana for all beings. All beings have their adhisthana, their basis in the self alone. Therefore, the self runs through any being that you think about, and that being is sustained, vivified by this same self alone. In this way, Atma becomes the Adhisthana, the basis for any Bhuta. Being limitless, Atma is not bound by time or space. And in this limitless consciousness alone, all beings have their being, their existence. Each one of them has its adhisthana, its basis in Atma, therefore in I, Aham. Aham, Atma, is not the self of any one being. It is the self that abides in all beings. Sarva Bhutastha Atma. So, this is so beautiful. We all are complete Purna. It is such a beautiful revelation. Anyone would like to share? I think as we read, it becomes clearer, right? So I will just read, and then if anyone would want me to repeat, or if anyone would like to share, please stop me.
Bella, can you go back to that paragraph before this page, before even this one? Yeah. Where where was that? Yeah, before this page. Yeah, one page before this, the last paragraph of this one.
Yeah.
Can you just read this one again?
Yeah.
This last paragraph. Yeah.
Yeah. The problem, how am I to recognize Atma in all these anatmas? This problem arises because this Atma that I recognize as myself is not only in my physical body. It is not in any one physical body alone. When you associate it with one body, it becomes ahankara, the I notion. It becomes the jiva, the individual. Then you go one step further and recognize the jiva as pure chaitanya, pure consciousness alone. Then everything else in the world, all the beings, all the minds, etc., have their being in that consciousness which has no particular location.
Mm.
It is very, very subtle and very simple, but as Swamiji said, it looks very simple and you feel that it is so, but it is that simple.
It is. It is like, if I remember, all these great saints, they do not identify themselves as I. They say in the Purva Ashrama, I was listening to Swami Ganapati Sachidananda sometime back, several years ago, and that he was giving he was being interviewed, And the interviewer kept asking him about his childhood and everything, his parents. He said, in the Purvashrama. Purvashrama is the time when before he, um, probably he must be an enlightened being. In the Purvashrama, this body, he never did mention I. He never did mention my. That was I thought it was a very beautiful way of um, kind of disidentifying yourself with the body. You're taking the body as anatma. That is one. And the second is, even China had mentioned, from the time a child is born, we go on telling him, as he's growing up, eat your breakfast, drink your milk, that your, and my, that we kind of very subconsciously, start giving it out. So that identification, as it is, we're born with that identification, it becomes even stronger. Rather than say, eat your breakfast, we can say, eat breakfast. So you disconnect um, otherwise there is that ahankara. This is my breakfast, my money, and they grew up and become egotistic and say, this is my money, this is my house, this is my. So from the time they're born, if we as parents can look at our children that way, teach them that, plus also have the same understanding ourselves. Instead of saying, this is my house, this is the house where, this is the house where, again, that I will come up there. But if we can have that mental disconnect from just that identification of this body as I. So as long as you say the I Atma abides, I abides in this body, then it is nothing but the ahankara. So yesterday we were trying to understand why both were being negated. So that amounts to the ahankara, the small I, the small ego. From there we have to merge to the big I, which runs in and through creation, which is like the huge ocean, which is very still. For instance, if you imagine the ocean to be still, that is the Sarva Bhutastha Atma. And then every bubble, every wave, every little ripple of that ocean has nothing but the ocean, the substance of the ocean.
That big I only, he says, aham.
Aham.
Aham
Nijam
Atma.
aham udeti.
Aham Atma.
Mm.
We think that small I,
We get
that is big.
limited by the small I, and that separation is
That
there.
aham, no, that aham, we take it as a small I. It's a big I. It's a big mind. I should not say mind. Mind again becomes when mind recognizes as a consciousness that you manifest. That is what he says. No. So we should not say that if there is no mind, there is no manifestation. That's a good thing. That's one more very, very good thing. So we have to concentrate on making this mind as no mind. That is what is meditation. Such a beautiful, really. Aham Atma is really, Aham means we have always thought it is this small I. It is not that small I. That here, each one of them has its adhisthana, its basis in Atma. And therefore, in I, Aham. Aham Atma is not the self of any one being. It is the self that abides in all the beings. Sarva Bhutastha Atma. Beautiful. Really beautiful. Whenever we read that Aham Atma, we always thought that small Atma. aham, small aham. It's the big I. Because each one of them has a sadhisthana, its basis in Atma, and therefore in I, aham, aham Atma is not the self of any one being. It is the self that abides in all the beings. Sarva Bhutastha Atma. This is the takeaway of this whole wonderful it is.
The resolution of all beings into the self by knowledge. The other statement in this verse, Sarva Bhutani cha Atmani Ikshate, is also important. It means, and the meditator sees all beings in the self. How? This is what is meant by resolution. To understand this, let us look at the different types of resolution or dissolution called laya or pralaya. One type of laya is called nitya laya, the resolution that takes place daily when you go to sleep. Everything is resolved into yourself, all your projections, all your experiences, the world and all its beings. All of them resolve into yourself alone in sleep. This is called Nitya Laya, daily dissolution. Then there is Mahapralaya, cosmic dissolution, referred to by the expression Shrishti Sthiti Pralaya, the creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the world itself. This type of laya is like deep sleep, but with reference to the total, the cosmos, rather than to a given individual. Nothing is really lost in these two types of dissolution, since everything is merely in its unmanifest condition. And when it manifests again, it is just as it was before. When you come back from sleep, you are as you were before, and everything else comes back in the same form also. Similarly, after Mahapralaya, the creation also comes back exactly as it was before and can therefore be considered an extension of the deep sleep condition alone. Because these manifest and unmanifest conditions form a cycle, nothing is really lost. I will just read again as it is this Einstein's theory's confirmation as well. The resolution of all beings into the self by knowledge. The other statement in this verse, Sarva Bhutani cha Atmani Ikshate, is also important. It means, and the meditator sees all beings in the self. How? This is what is meant by resolution. To understand this, let us look at the different types of resolution or dissolution called laya or pralaya. One type of laya is called nitya laya, the resolution that takes place daily when you go to sleep. Everything is resolved into yourself, all your projections, your experiences, the world and all its beings. All of them resolve into yourself alone in sleep. This is called Nitya Laya, daily dissolution. Then there is Mahapralaya, cosmic dissolution. referred to by the expression Shrishti Sthiti Pralaya, the creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the world itself. This type of laya is like deep sleep, but with reference to the total, the cosmos, rather than to a given individual. Nothing is really lost in these two types of dissolution, since everything is merely in its unmanifest condition. And when it manifests again, it is just as it was before. When you come back from sleep, you are as you were before, and everything else comes back in the same form also. Similarly, after Mahapralaya, the creation also comes back exactly as it was before and can therefore be considered an extension of the deep sleep condition alone. Because these manifest and unmanifest conditions form a cycle, nothing is really lost. A manifest condition to an unmanifest condition is called pralaya, dissolution, resolution. And from the unmanifest condition to a manifest condition is called shrishti, creation. And the continual change that the manifest form undergoes is called sthiti, sustenance, wherein the same manifestation seems to appear but with certain changes. Sthiti is not a stationary condition. It is time-bound and always changing. Everything is always in a state of flux, but still recognizable. Even though constantly changing, the same mountain is recognized by you, the same sun, the same moon. Meeting an old friend after 10 years, you recognize the person in spite of the changes that have taken place in each of you. If moment to moment things were to change in such a drastic way that you could not recognize them at all, there would be continuous dissolution, pralaya, and no sthiti at all. Continuous dissolution and continuous creation is meaningless. There is then a recognizable sthiti, sustenance, in spite of the changes taking place. The sun itself is imploding all the time and thus is not exactly the same sun that you just saw a minute before. It may run out too. In the same way, nothing remains the same. Everything is constantly changing. There is creation, shrishti, constant change within itself, sthiti, and dissolution, pralaya. This shrishti, sthiti, pralaya cycle is nothing but the manifestation and unmanifestation of consciousness, Atma. I will just read this paragraph once again. From a manifest condition to an unmanifest condition is called pralaya, dissolution or resolution. And from the unmanifest condition to a manifest condition is called shrishti, creation. And the continual change that the unmanifest form undergoes is called sthiti, sustenance, wherein the same same manifestation seems to appear, but with certain changes. Sthiti is not a stationary condition. It is time-bound and always changing. Everything is always in a state of flux, but still recognizable. Even though constantly changing, the same mountain is recognized by you, the same sun, the same moon. Meeting an old friend after 10 years, you recognize the person in spite of the changes that have taken place in each of you. If moment to moment things were to change in such a drastic way that you could not recognize them at all, there would be continuous dissolution, pralaya, and no sthiti at all. Continuous dissolution and continuous creation is meaningless. There is then a recognizable sthiti, sustenance, in spite of the changes taking place. The sun itself is imploding all the time and thus is not exactly the same sun that you just saw a minute before. It may run out too. In the same way, nothing remains the same. Everything is constantly changing. There is creation, shrishti, constant change within itself, sthiti, and dissolution, pralaya. This shrishti, sthiti, pralaya cycle is nothing but the manifestation and unmanifestation of consciousness, Atma. Anyone would like to share or explain it in a simple way? Or I should read further and then we can have.
Bela, can you just read the previous paragraph, the previous page, the last paragraph again? The thing about sthiti, no?
Yeah. Shrishti, Sthiti and Laya. Yeah. Pralaya.
The last paragraph, even though constantly changing.
Yeah, but you don't want me to repeat the from the beginning? Okay.
I think
Because
you've read it already
very,
twice, no? Just this last paragraph.
No, but it is very important to understand
Okay, then.
Shrishti, Sthiti and Pralaya.
Yeah, go ahead and read them.
Yeah. One type of laya is called Nitya Laya, the resolution that takes place daily when you go to sleep. Everything is resolved into yourself, all your projections, your experiences, the world and all its beings. All of them resolve into yourself alone in sleep. This is called Nitya Laya, daily dissolution. Then there is Mahapralaya, cosmic dissolution, referred to by the expression Srishti, Sthiti, Pralaya, the creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the world itself. This type of laya is like deep sleep, but with reference to the total, the cosmos, rather than to a given individual. Nothing is really lost in these two types of dissolution, since everything is merely in its unmanifest condition, and when it manifests again, it is just as it was before. When you come back from sleep, you are as you were before, and everything else comes back in the same form also. Similarly, after Mahapralaya, the creation also comes back exactly as it was before and can therefore be considered an extension of the deep sleep condition alone. Because these manifest and unmanifest conditions form a cycle, nothing is really lost. From a manifest condition to an unmanifest condition is called pralaya, dissolution or resolution. And from the unmanifest condition to a manifest condition is called shrishti, creation. And the continual change that the manifest form undergoes is called sthiti, sustenance, wherein the same manifestation seems to appear but with certain changes. Sthiti is not a stationary condition. It is time-bound and always changing. Everything is always in a state of flux, but still recognizable. Even though constantly changing, the same mountain is recognized by you, the same sun, the same moon. Meeting an old friend after 10 years, you recognize the person in spite of the changes that have taken place in each of you. If moment to moment things were to change in such a drastic way that you could not recognize them at all, there would be continuous dissolution, pralaya, and no sthiti at all. Continuous
Can you just read
dissolution.
that sentence again, Bella? Sorry, that is the sentence I wanted you to repeat. 1 second. Yeah.
Yeah. If moment to moment things were to change in such a drastic way that you could not recognize them at all, there would be continuous dissolution, pralaya, and no sthiti at all. And just to remind, sthiti is that continual change that the manifest form undergoes. Continuous dissolution and continuous creation is meaningless. There is then a recognizable sthiti, sustenance, in spite of the changes taking place.
So we are all in sthiti condition now. The whole world, what we are seeing,
Vrishti, sthiti, pralaya, creation, sustenance, and dissolution.
Yeah, I think you can read further, no, Bella?
Yeah, okay.
Before we...
The sun itself is imploding all the time and thus is not exactly the same sun that you just saw a minute before. It may run out too. In the same way, nothing remains the same. Everything is constantly changing. There is creation, shrishti, constant change within itself, sthiti, and dissolution, pralaya. This shrishti, sthiti, pralaya cycle is nothing but the manifestation and unmanifestation of consciousness, Atma. Moksha is also dissolution. A third type of pralaya is called atyanta pralaya, total dissolution, and is what we call moksha. Atyanta pralaya or moksha does not involve any kind of disappearance. You look at the same object and resolve it in the appreciation of its cause, the truth of the object, satyavastu. For example, when you see 1,000 pots all born of clay, you resolve all of these objects by appreciating clay as the satya of every pot. Then there is Maha Atyanta Pralaya. When all names and forms with their various distinct features go into a state of unmanifest condition, it is called either Laya or Pralaya. This means that it is either Nityalaya or Mahapralaya. Whereas here, without changing any object, things are as they are, but at the same time, they are envisioned by you as non-separate from the cause, Brahma Atma. This particular vision is unfolded in this verse by the words Sarva Bhutani cha Atmani Ikshate. Vedanta reveals the cause, Karana, of everything as Satya and the effect, Karya, as Mithya. This particular analysis is therefore called Karana Karya Vada, cause-effect analysis. In fact, there is no real Karana or Karya because one of them becomes Mithya. This means that the status of being a Karana is also incidental. Everything that is here is Satya Brahma alone. Knowing this, you look at the world, the same world, with a different buddhi. You look at it as the Purusha, I, the cause. Therefore, the entire creation is only in terms of subtle and gross bodies, Sukshma, Sthula, Shariras. These alone are created, whereas Atma, being timeless, is not created. Uncreated Atma is the truth of everything, Satya Vastu, the basis, Adhisthana of any creation that may be there. Atma is the very basis for the vision implied by the words in this verse, Sarva Bhutastham Atmanam Sarva Bhutani cha Atmani Ikshate. Here a problem can arise. Wherever there is Adhisthana, a confusion is possible between the bases, Ashraya and the based, Ashrita. For example, when I say on the rope is a snake or on the gold is a chain, you may think that the snake is actually lying on the rope or the chain is actually sitting on top of the gold. This would mean that the rope and the snake or that the rope and the chain are two different things, when in fact they are not. This is just a way of describing something wherein there are apparently two objects, but in fact there is only one. When we talk about the snake on the rope or the chain on the gold, one object is called Adhisthana, the basis, and the other is something that is based, dependent on this Adhisthana basis. I will just read this last paragraph. Between Atma and the world, there is no basis-based relationship. Thus, we see that this basis-based relationship generally implies two different things. Here too, the Jagat, the world, all the beings, Sarva Bhutani, are based upon Atma. And this is called Sarva Bhutastha Atma. The Atma that is the Adhisthana for all beings. Even so, this is not a basis-based relationship. Such a division is not there because all the bhutas are non-separate from Atma, which is why Krishna says here, Sarva Bhutani Atmani Ikshate. The person, the Sarvatra Samadarshi, the one who sees the Sama Atma in everything, recognizes all beings as non-separate from the Paramatma, just as he or she sees the clay in the pots and the gold in the chains. Seeing all beings, time, space, everything in Atma is called Atyanta Pralaya, a dissolution of the difference between objects and their cause. Atyanta Pralaya is not the dissolution of the world. It is the dissolution of the difference between the world and its Karana, a difference born out of pure Agnana, ignorance. This difference, division, is resolved in the vision that whatever that is here is non-separate from Atma, that is Brahman. It's very beautiful. We will just close our eyes and then we will share our takeaways for today, Manana. I'll just read once again the last verse.
Jai Gurudev. I feel this just now what Belaji read, it will help us to loosen the grip of the Maya in our mind. Jai Gurudev.
Yes.
Because for us, this Maya, this is the reality. No, we sleep also with that thoughts and with everything. We get up also, and the effect of this changing world, the sthiti world is so much that constantly we are in that, when even sleeping and dreaming and moving throughout, that is the most predominant, that has the hold on us. So to loosen that, I think whatever we have read, no, that will help to come out of that grip of sthiti portion, Maya. Jai Gurudev. Brahmaraji, please elaborate on this. No, this is very important.
What
Yeah,
I
Manana.
was, when they talk about Laya Pralaya, that our time on this earth is so short and everything is being created and resolving itself again. So then why do we hold petty-minded issues in our mind over certain things? And then the question of the Atma being present in everybody. So my mother-in-law, my stubborn boss or obstinate boss or Karu's boss, all those kind of relationship issues which we have, Atma is there in everybody. So having a belongingness for everybody. So when everything is impermanent, we get that viveka in our buddhi, that nothing is permanent, everything is changing. The whole world is going to be dissolved and again it will be resolved. Everything is going to be the same again. Then why hold on to things, issues, and why not have a belongingness to everybody? Like Gurudev says, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Jai.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. I will just read this shloka once again and then we can again continue our discussion. सर्वभूतस्थमात्मानं सर्वभूतानि चात्मनि ईक्षते योगयुक्तात्मा सर्वत्र समदर्शनः. One whose mind is resolved by this contemplation, who has the vision of sameness everywhere, sees the self abiding in all beings and all beings in the self. I request everyone to contribute their takeaways. It is such a beautiful. Do not get confused by too many words. Just it is very, very simple. Whatever you have understood, please share your one-line contribution also.
Jai Gurudev, I really loved this. There is no location for the divine and the consciousness. And between the two beads, the thread is also the same. That was really beautiful. Thank you.
So, what I understood is all beings in one Chaitanya, so there's one consciousness. So we think we are all different people, but it's all the same. So we're all in one, we're all in it in one consciousness, all the existence of all beings in one consciousness. In
Also
everywhere.
time, yeah.
Yeah.
And also time and
Yeah.
space is also in the same consciousness.
Yeah, but it's not like it is within that context, consciousness. It's not, but that the consciousness is not with the time or not limited by time or space. The consciousness is not limited by that. But then the time and space exist in the consciousness.
Shall I say something? Am I audible?
Sure.
Yes, sure, Ji.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So, one is a beautiful shloka, no doubt about saying everything is in the consciousness. But for me, the starting point would be to understand as to what am I seeking? Because whatever I'm seeking is in terms of maybe objects, in terms of time, in terms of place. So this is what we are seeking, right? We are seeking happiness, thinking that some point in time I'll get happiness, from someone I'll get happiness, or from some object I'll get happiness, isn't it? So first, maybe for my journey, I want to first understand that happiness is not there in any of these things. Meaning, by going to some place, I'm not going to be happy. By being with someone, I'm not going to be happy. By getting something, I'm not going to be happy. Right? So then the source has to come, and I have to realize that, okay, the happiness that I am looking for is me, myself. Me, myself is the happiness. Once that starts to happen, then that oneness and connectedness, or feeling that everything is happening in that one consciousness, will probably make more sense to me. Otherwise, at this point, it seems very intellectually very good to know, but experientially probably still far off. Seems like, for me, I'm talking about myself. So first, going from that microcosm to the macrocosm is probably what I would do for my journey. Because today we are made to condition to think that something, somewhere, sometime is going to give me what I am seeking. Once that seeking drops, once that seeking goes away, then you experience all that Swamiji has said, or Bhagavan has said in this sloka. Then that realization happens, is my take on that. Dhanyavada. Jai Guru.
See, that is why it is mentioned here in the sthiti state, when how you don't get lost in the sthiti, and how you see Atma everywhere is by looking at the cause of going to the cause. Like he gave the example of the 1,000 pots. You can either view them as pots, as individual entities, or you could go to the cause of the pots, which is the clay. So even in the sthiti state, we have the shrishti, sthiti, and the laya. And in the sthiti state, where all of us are in, where there is constant change happening, which is so minute that we are not able to make out. We think everything is like stable and permanent, but there is some constant flux happening within this sthiti. How do we see the presence of consciousness in this sthiti? Is by looking at the cause of that. Karana Karanaya. So that I think when we focus on the cause, then we will not get lost in this mithya jagat. Then all that Percy ji said, all that Madhuri ji said about, becoming, not letting the world have a hold on you. You have a hold. You are understanding everything. But what I was looking at is in terms of the karma yoga that Bhagwan had told Arjuna. If Arjuna now has this doubt, now you say everything is the same, then why Bhishma, Drona, Duryodhana are all the same? Why should I even fight? But there the question comes. He's given him the what is that? The Vishwarupa Sandarshan. Of course, that comes a little later. Seeing that everything is in me, you have to get up and fight. So that vichakshana has to be there. So that although we say everything is the same, while we live in this world, we have to have that difference in our mind. An elephant is different from a snake, which is different from a flower, which is different from the dosa, the different from the plate. Because you say, okay, everything is the same, you can't say the plate is same as dosa and I'll eat the plate. There is that difference, that vastu vishaya, the difference is there. So there, when we are dealing with the world, with this understanding that everything is ultimately nothing but consciousness, with that viveka, we will have to deal with the world. So one aspect is to see everything as consciousness. Another aspect is how to be a karma yogi within this mithya jagat, which is what was expounded in karma yoga. So this is a beautiful, again, it reminds me of Krishna standing one foot flat on the floor and the other foot, just the toes touching the floor. So deeply rooted in this sarva bhutastha atmanam, sarva bhutani chatmani, that awareness and that understanding that there is nothing else but the sat vastu, which is consciousness, I still will have to relate to things and objects around me. I will not eat mud because mud is also, because I see everything is consciousness. I will eat edible things. So I think that, of course, that aspect was not brought in here. I was just reminded of this. I thought I will share this part.
I feel that when you talk about Krishna telling Arjun to fight, and then looking at it from the point of view all are one, then why fight? It's like even in our own body, we have good bacteria, which fights against the bad bacteria that enter our body, and they have to kill. So that karma you have to do is the way I look at it.
Because everyone has been given a place, a uniqueness, like one bolt or one thing, or like a flower or an elephant. Everyone has its place in this Srishti. So the Srishti depends upon these sthitis, wherever they are. So if we imbalance it, then there is a completely imbalance and havoc will go on. So there is a point there we have to accept wherever we are and do that work. Then thinking in a big way that whatever we have done, we are not doing it. It's a srishti. It is a srishti that time. And what we are doing is in the sthiti. And what will happen is pralaya.
And so particularly like the analogy of sleep and deep sleep with respect to this Nitya Laya and um, Pralaya, which is with relation to the cosmos. It's such a beautiful thing that we have this sleep. Every day we're going into this Laya. And when you wake up, when you sleep, you are with your physical body, with all your eyes, nose, and place, everything in its place. And when you get up, you still have everything in its place. So there is, it comes back to it's from from manifest, it goes into unmanifest, where in during sleep, the whole mind, everything resolves. All the experiences that you've had, your relations, everything just, it as though kind of collapses into your being. You go into sleep, and when you get up again, there is creation. It is from the unmanifest, you're again coming into manifestation, and then you are again the same. You don't alter suddenly. You don't transform into someone else. You are still the same being, with the eyes, nose, mouth, everything, wherever it is. Bhagwan has given us the sleep. It's such a beautiful aspect of our daily life, that Gurudev, I remember, had said, if any, understanding sleep, you can actually understand. It takes you into deeper realms of understanding of very consciousness. So this, when you extrapolate into the infinite universe, into the cosmos, that becomes the pralaya, where, so there is nothing lost. That the whole aspect of nothing being lost, that is what we learn in physics also. There is, whatever is there is just transformation of energy. Energy can neither be destroyed nor created. It can only be transformed. So there is this constant flux happening. It goes on and on. I'm just reminded, in the Mandala Vatika, there is this concept of this tube torus, which is like a donut. It just resolves into itself and comes back again. It resolves into itself and comes back again. I will share that video, if possible, in the group. It's such a beautiful understanding that there is nothing new, that is nothing lost. It is, and this Srishti, Sthiti, and Laya is almost constantly happening, and each one of us has this, like, we are the center of our universe. See, how I look at the universe and how I look at the world is different from how any of you is looking at the world. So each of us has the Srishti within ourselves, in the body, in the mind. And in the mind of the Jnani, this is that resolution, the last paragraph that was read, so beautiful it was, where the jiva the individual jiva merges with the uh, the universe. He's able to see himself in everything, or he has that sarva bhutastam atmanam, that beautiful state where there is no difference. Everything is just one.
Yeah. So that kind of actually, the sadhu, whatever we are reading, how we apply in every day, like you said, in everybody's mind, we think in different ways. In my mind, like I say that, okay, even somebody says bad things about you. When you're looking at them, we have this knowledge of, okay, we are all the same being. So in that way, we let go that whatever that bad feeling is, and you're looking at that person also as a person. So that's how we kind of get to see that like sameness in everywhere. So that is my way of looking at it. Even though we don't use this my I and all this, it's all like that small I and my um. So that's the sameness that we are talking about. Like when we go into this, Swamiji is explaining all these things, but then if we focus on those 2 lines that we are reading and just take away from that and try to apply that, would be at least, like it's doable in a day-to-day basis, and how we kind of adding to every day when we did one sloka at a time. That's how I feel with this. Thank you.
Which is very true. Thank you, Dr. Mara. But at the same time, what we're talking of is not just passive acceptance. Here,
No,
it is
not
active
that.
acceptance. No, what I
Yeah,
mean is you brought in a
yeah,
very beautiful aspect
yeah,
of applying it in our day-to-day life. The sarva bhutastam atmanam, sarva bhutani chatmani. With this at the background, it will of course help us not see intention behind others' mistakes, not become a football, see that opposite values are complementary. At the same time, you will also, you're supposed to, like how Arjuna was asked by Krishna, to take active responsibility. It is active
yeah,
acceptance, wherein wherever
yeah,
it is required for you to act, you will act, knowing
yeah,
that
sure.
it is all the same. Like you know your son who is not doing the right thing. You see the atma, you accept him, that this fact that everybody, there is a consciousness in every being, that will help you accept the fact, and you will not get upset because you're not living in that the small I, ahankara. Because by
Right.
the ahankara comes in, everything else becomes like you, me, mine, and that
Yeah,
separateness comes. But at the same time, you don't just stop there. You take active responsibility and do whatever is required from. That is karma yoga. So that is the beautiful gel of how um, um, I mean, for all of us sadhaks, we are not still jnana nishtas. For jnana nishta, even for jnana nishta like Krishna, he also says there is nothing for me to do, but I still continue to do in order to set a role model, in order to be an exemplary role model.
right.
I don't know whether I've
But
got my point
sometimes,
across.
right. What I meant to say is, like, if somebody says, like, this, you're trying to help people, but they take it differently, and then they go and tell their third person something else. And that way, I feel that you don't go and confront this person, hey, why did you go and say that and this and that? And that's how these people are, and that's how it is. And we can leave it at that, and go from there. Or you can have to say, okay, there are certain places you can go and ask, but some people, it's better to leave it like that than go and confront and make it more bitter, so that sometimes happens in our lives, so that's where I'm talking about, like some of these issues where you feel, okay, it's within the same family member, sometimes it happens. And then,
Jai Gurudev.
yeah,
I
go
think,
ahead.
Mara, here exactly the course points, basic course points, and by practicing the pranayam Sudarshan Kriya, you keep your prana level high, and automatically you are more ready to implement all the course points. And another very important thing is that in the advanced course, they tell you to handle the problems in 4 ways. Certain things will not change, like the tail of the dog. Even if you tie it for hundreds of years, it will remain. But the moment you remove the stick, it is going to curl up. So certain things won't change. Certain everything is changing, and certain things with your own valor you can change. And the fourth is you surrender. So intuitively, when your prana is high, you will take the steps which are required in this mithya world, changing world. So don't we won't get bothered too much as we move on with our practices which Gurudev has given. Automatically, time to time, intuitively, whatever the steps are to be taken, whether to give him some, the other person, some this thing, or just leave it, or whatever is to be done, intuitively your behavior becomes like that. But for that, your prana has to be high, and prana will remain high when you go through your daily practices which Gurudev has given: Padma Sadhana, Pranayam, Kriya, and mudras. It definitely helps, and you can laugh at the situation if and move on. And if it is needed through you to be given some words or something, it will automatically flow through you. You become like the instrument for the divine, for everything. And uplift from that also, that it is a maya, काय को ये झंझट में अपना दिमाग. For that I feel, Brahmaraji, that
Yeah.
just before going to sleep, and just before the moment you get up, after the moment you get up, these 2 points, if we can catch and be steady and still in that moment, which will help us to come out of this, the grip of this changing world. That's what I felt, so I wanted to share this. And what Mara is saying, that is the exactly we used to feel, no, the grip of the, how to handle the situations, how to handle the people. All those answers are given in the very basic course of Art of Living. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you, Mataji and Dr. Pramara.
You wanted to say something else, Dr. Mara? You was there
No,
something else you wanted to share?
No, that's pretty good. Yeah, input also, like what I meant to say. Sometimes we go the extent of what Swamiji is saying. What I understood about Laya and Pralaya was like, Laya is that, yeah, the day-to-day changes that we go through, and you gave different explanation. That is also true. You, in your own mind, you're creating a lot of thoughts, and we are creating a lot of things in our own action and everything else. So that is also own creation. But what I thought about creation was like Brahma creating, and that the sthiti was like constantly changing world, and like constantly the birth and death, and then finally there is this dissolution. You remember that we did that Brahma age and years and all that some time that the Pralaya come. So
Right.
that is what I was thinking. And then when you brought up, that was a good point as well. Like in our own mind, there are so many things comes and dies, right?
Mm.
So that also in that aspect, so I didn't think of that, but that was a good thing. And then the other thing is our body constantly changing. Every cell is like getting old and which dies, and there are new cells are coming up, and that's how we renew ourselves in every day. uh, that was another thought that came to me.
So ultimately, I'm just trying to envision this thing. There is only one, that is the consciousness. It is like, even in quantum physics, that is what they mention. The whole world is nothing but the whole creation. There is actually no matter in it. It is only vibrations. It is only ripples. It's like if there is it's just like a huge calm ocean, if you can imagine. And then
Yeah.
all the manifest world, the creation, is nothing but those little ripples of waves and bubbles and everything else that comes from the surface. So that is the manifest creation, and ultimately it will go down, it will settle down into the depths of the ocean. So there is creation, there is Sthiti. For some time they dance around, the waves dance around that, but they're still constantly changing. That is the Sthiti. And then again Laya happens, and then they again die down. So there is creation happening, there is Sthiti, and there's Laya. And this is constantly happening. But what we have to connect with is that underlying consciousness, which is all pervading, which runs in and through creation, which is the unchanging, which is the only
Not
thing, which is
dying,
the Satvastu.
even though there are things that dying, that consciousness never dies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
So
that is
that's
beyond time and space. All this,
yeah,
see, a wave that is born in time.
right.
It stays in time and it dissolves in time. So it is all time bound. Whereas the ocean, if you can imagine the ocean to be consciousness, it is beyond time and space. It is the only thing that is.
Yeah. That's Satchid Anandam, that like I remember this name, Satchidanandam in Tamil. After reading this whole thing, that Satchidanandam. So we are not looking for happiness. I mean, we are looking for happiness outward, outside of us, but the happiness is inside of us. So that's the one we have to realize and to get there. So
The
As
beautiful
Brahma
verse for
said,
contemplation.
as Brahma said, for me, this conclusion is that sentence I read again. In this limitless consciousness alone, all beings have their being, their existence. Each one of them has its adhisthana, its basis in Atma, and therefore in I, Aham. Aham Atma is not the self of any one being, it is the self of that abides in all beings, that is Sarva Bhutastha Atma. That is simple, just everything is one, as you said. That is the summation. Wonderful.
Yeah. I think we will stop here today.
It has
Yes.
in the college, no? Bapre, it is so beautiful throughout the day. Thank you.
Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.